The Minnesota Vikings have been eliminated from the playoffs after losing Sunday Night Football game to the Green Bay Packers. Now, again, we weren't expecting the Vikings to make a Super Bowl run out of this, but it feels good. It kind of feels good for the season to be over because I'm tired of watching this Vikings team. I'm tired of having Mike Zimmer as our head coach. I'm tired of Clint Kubiak calling the plays. It feels good that we can finally look to the future. Now, it doesn't feel good that the NFL season is ending because NFL is the greatest sport in the world, and I don't like the offseason. But again, this offseason, we can focus on what is needed for this team, rebuilding this Vikings team. And it starts with Mike Zimmer. The Monday after the Chicago Bears game is going to be funny because Matt Nagy and Mike Zimmer will both be playing their final game as a head coach with their current team and will be released the game afterwards. So both are looking to future head coach. I've selected 5 head coaches who I believe the Vikings should look to bringing in, and in order of who the Vikings should look to bringing in as our new head coach in the 2022 offseason. Now, looking at this, what are the requirements that I think would be best fitting for this Vikings team? First of all, it has to be in bold letters, an offensive minded head coach. An young offensive minded head coach. That is the most important thing in the NFL because you look to this Vikings team, we need someone who can call the plays for us. We need someone who can run our offense. Andre Patterson can handle the defense. That's fine. Let him handle the defense. And as a matter of fact, bring in another player who can handle the defense with Andre Patterson. We'll leave that to him because Patterson is great at developing defensive linemen. He does it very well, and we want him to stay in our team. Mike Zimmer doesn't have to have his nose in the defense anymore. He's going to go be a defensive coordinator somewhere. We have to look to a new offensive minded head coach. Number 2, another reason, another thing you have to look at, NFL players have to vouch by this player, by this coach. I mean, NFL players have to say, he's a great guy. He's very good at what he does. That is important. There has to be players who vouch by their offensive coordinator, which is what we're going to look at. Offensive coordinators here who can be the future play caller and head coach for the Vikings. Players have to vouch by their guy. Number 3, and I know a lot of people are going to hate me for this, but they have to be under 60 years old. Okay, I don't want to bring in another old guy like Mike Zimmer. I don't want to bring in another old guy who runs an offense like it's the 1980s. The next head coach for the Vikings at least has to be under 60 years old. Under 50 is even better. Under 40 is even better. It's got to be a young guy. It has to be a Kyle Shanahan, young offensive guru, a Sean McVay, a Matt LaFleur, a Kevin Stefanski. I mean, Cliff Kingsbury. It has to be one of these guys for this Vikings team. Why? Because that's best for our team to have a young offensive guy who can lead this offense into the right direction. That's what we have to look for. Because honestly, if the Vikings don't do that, if the Vikings don't bring in a young offensive minded head coach who gets a lot of credit from his players, Justin Jefferson is gone. Did we forget that Jefferson is not having a good time? Jefferson wants to win. He wants to get the ball. He wants to get targeted, and rightfully so because he's the best player in this Vikings offense. Yet he's only getting 6 targets a game. We need a young offensive-minded head coach, and that's why I've selected these 5 players to be on the Vikings head coaching list for the 2022 offseason. First off, we have Josh McDaniels. Now, McDaniels is so late on this list. He's a big name in the NFL. I mean, obviously, Patriots has been under the dynasty. He's been the Patriots offensive coordinator since 2012, so been a huge name in the NFL. And why the Vikings should look for him as a head coach is because, again, he's a young offensive-minded head coach who gets a lot of credit from his players. Problem is, and why he's 5th on this list, is because I hate how he runs an offense. I don't like how he runs an offense. I think his offense looks horrendous. Now, it's good for Mac Jones, but I want someone who can work as a quarterback, can have a good relationship with a quarterback. And I just don't see Josh McDaniels as a person who wants to be a run-first team, as a person who owns in the trenches, as a person who believes a good team needs to run the ball 20 sometimes a game or 30 sometimes a game. Again, that doesn't work with his Vikings team. We have to keep the ball in the air. We have to pass on every down. Every down is a passing down, and that is why I have him 5th on this list. With that being said, great guy, would be a perfect head coaching candidate, just does not run an offense how I would like for the Vikings to run an offense. But again, maybe he can switch it up. Maybe just him playing under Bill Belichick has caused that to really develop in him. But again, I want someone who runs an offense different than Josh McDaniels. And that's why number 4, we have Eric Bieniemy. Eric Bieniemy is in a lot of people's top 3. As a matter of fact, he's a lot of people's first choice as a head coach. Thing with Bieniemy, He's old. All right, that's the only thing that I have him fourth on this list. Eric Bieniemy has been the Chiefs' offensive coordinator under their dynasty with Patrick Mahomes since 2018. He gets credited a little bit too much. It's Andy Reid. Andy Reid is the mastermind behind the Chiefs' offense. It's not so much Eric Bieniemy. He might be playing, calling a lot of the plays and helping Andy Reid, but again, you look at it, Eric Bieniemy does get a lot of the credit. He is a offensive guru. He knows how to run an offense, and he would be a perfect. The Minnesota Vikings would be a perfect spot for Bieniemy to go to and be a head coach. He's a lot of people's first choice. I have him fourth on this list because he just doesn't check all of the boxes. He does not check all of the boxes. With that being said, he does play for Andy Reid, and it's a little bit iffy. It's a toss up in the air because who's the credit for how great the Chiefs has been playing? I mean, obviously Patrick Mahomes in their offense, but that aside, who's the credit for their great play calling? Because that has really helped Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes is in the perfect scenario. I would, if I made a pie chart, over 50% of that would go to Andy Reid. Not as much would go to Eric Bieniemy. But again, I would be okay. I'd be okay with the Vikings bringing in Bieniemy. Number three, and this top three, we are getting into where I really love now. Byron Leftwich, offensive coordinator with the Buccaneers for the last few seasons. I love this. This is perfect. And the reason why I love Byron Leftwich coming with our team is because, like I said, Vikings have to look to a new quarterback. The future for this team is not Kirk Cousins. Who better than Byron Leftwich, who has been an NFL quarterback or has played quarterback in his past, is a perfect quarterback coach who can develop quarterbacks. That is important because head coach quarterback relationship is so important in the NFL. And who better than Byron Leftwich, who, yes, Tom Brady has more leverage than him, but is a perfect offensive play caller for the Buccaneers and runs an offense that I want the Minnesota Vikings to run. A pass heavy offense, who, by the way, yes, the Buccaneers are a pass heavy offense, but they run the ball well. That's what I want with the Vikings. A pass heavy offense who runs the ball well, who has the run game as an option. But again, pass on first, second, third, fourth down. It doesn't matter what down it is. All downs are passing downs. And that's how Byron Leftwich runs an offense, and he runs the ball very well as well. But you'll notice he's number three in this list. In this top three, I love the top three. I'll be fine with any of these players. Byron Leftwich, number two, Brian Daboll. Brian Daboll is another person who a lot of people have him as their number one option. I have someone else as my number one option. But Brian Daboll, again, he runs an offense that I'd like the Vikings to run. Brian Daboll gets a lot of credit from his players. I mean, Josh Allen loves the guy. Stephon Diggs loves him, so they likely wouldn't want him to leave. And that's why I have him second on this list. With that being said, the Bills' offense has been very lackluster. They've had terrible games. And that's because they can't run the ball. And Vikings having Dalvin Cook would be a lot better for Brian Daboll to be with. Their offense has been very lackluster. He's been the Bills' offensive coordinator the last few seasons since 2018. They brought him in with Josh Allen, and he's been their offensive play caller and has done very well as a play caller for them, and should be maybe the first head coach, taken in the 2022 offseason. But Brian Daboll, 46 years old, perfect spot for him to go with the Minnesota Vikings. Would be great for him to be a head coach alongside whatever quarterback we bring in for our future. It's not going to be Kellen Mond. Yeah, I'll put that straight flat out there. It will not be Kellen Mond, but whoever our future quarterback is, Brian Daboll would be a great fit for him. But number one, and my favorite, a lot of people are going to hate me, but I love him, and he would be so perfect for this Vikings team, is Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore checks every box that you want as a head coach in 2022. Everything you want as a head coach. Happy 2022, by the way. Happy New Year's to all you guys. Is everything you want. He is equivalent to a Sean McVay. He's equivalent to a Kyle Shanahan. He's equivalent to a Matt LaFleur, Cliff Kingsbury. Kevin Stefanski. He's young, 33 years old. He's only a month older than Kirk Cousins. He is a young guy who runs an offense like it's actually the 2020s, unlike Mike Zimmer. The only box it doesn't check is the fact that he doesn't look like a head coach. I mean, he looks like he'd be playing quarterback for the team, which, by the way, he did play quarterback. He played quarterback, I believe it was with the Lions and the Cowboys in the past. So, again, another reason why the Vikings should bring him in. He played quarterback. What does that mean? He can develop quarterbacks. He can help quarterbacks play as on our team. So whoever the future quarterback for the Vikings is, they can build a good relationship. What is another thing? All of the players in the offense vouch for him. He might be 33 years old, but if he can earn the locker room, if he can win the locker room, which is what the most important thing a head coach can do, is win the locker room, win the credit from his players, win the respect. That is number one that a head coach can do. Number two is winning. If he can do both those things, which he has for the Cowboys the last few seasons, that is the best head coaching sign the Vikings can do. Like I said, he checks every box other than the fact that he doesn't look like a head coach. That's the only box he doesn't check. He wins the respect from his players. He runs an offense like it's the 2020s or whatever. He can develop quarterbacks. That's important because the Vikings have to look to a new quarterback. He's a young offensive guru, offensive-minded head coach. He runs the ball very well, but most importantly, he runs a pass-heavy offense. That's amazing. And if you watch any Cowboys games, you will see, which you'll continue to watch them because they're in the playoffs, you'll see the offense that he runs, the plays that he runs. Now, yes, they have maybe the best receiving core in the NFL. They have maybe the best running back duo and the second best running back duo in the NFL. Doesn't matter. He makes everybody look good. Everybody looks good under a Kellen Moore offense, which is why this is the perfect spot for Kellen Moore to go. I'd be fine with Brian Daboll. I'd be fine with Byron Leftwich. Those are two other options that I'd be okay with. But number one, I would love to see Kellen Moore as our head coach in 2022 and beyond. Maybe the next 30 years because he's 33 years old. We might see him play the next 30 years or be a head coach the next 30 years with the Minnesota Vikings. That is what I want. That is what we need, is a young offensive guru. A young offensive guru who can work and develop a future quarterback for this team. That would be huge for this Vikings team, and I would continue to love to see that happen with our team, to have Kellen Moore as our head coach, to have maybe Brian Daboll, maybe Brian Leftwich, but most importantly, Kellen Moore as our head coach. Let me know what y'all think. Let me know if there's anybody that was not on this list. Now, and a lot of people are talking about Doug Peterson coming back. Don't bring in Doug Peterson. We're just not a team who wouldn't make sense for him. Todd Bowles is another name a lot of people bring up. Not a big fan of Bowles. I mean, he's a defensive coordinator. Why would we want another defensive coordinator? That has never worked with our offense. Has never worked as for a head coach for our team. We don't need to bring in a defensive-minded head coach. It just doesn't work. It does not work. Now, I understand Bill Belichick's a defensive head coach. Bill Belichick and Mike Tomlin are the exception. They are the exception for head coaches who are defensive-minded head coaches. The exception. We have to look to a young offensive-minded head coach like Kyle Shanahan, like Sean McVay, like Matt LaFleur, like Kevin Stefanski. People in their 30s would be great. People in their 30s or 40s who can be a head coach for a team and bring this Vikings team to a Super Bowl. That is what we need going forward. And it starts with the head coach. Actually, well, it starts with getting rid of Mike Zimmer and it starts with getting rid of Clint Kubiak. After that, you can bring in a head coach who can call the plays and run your offense for you. Let me know if there's anybody I missed or if you would like to see. Thanks.